Hey, what's up? This is Scott with Level Up Tutorials, and today we're going to show you how to use ngInclude to include various templates as well as things like SVGs to have inline SVGs in your website. And if you don't know why that's special, we'll show you in a second. So here we have our project where we left off with. Since we last left off, I just added a bit of CSS here to make these heads show up a little bit better. They're not so gigantic. This text is now being vertically aligned here. I really just added a list style of none on the unordered list. I added a display flex and a margin bottom on the list item. I added a display inline block and a line height to the span, and I added some stuff to the image to give it a border radius as well as a width and a height to tame it down a little bit. So as you can see, this is the result here. We now have a list that's a little bit better to look at than what we had before. Functionally, nothing's different. It's just to make it so this isn't totally hideous to look at. So let's talk about organizing our code a little bit. In the previous video, you saw we have this HTML and we have this unordered list. It's repeating full of our people in this list here. Now, let's say we have this list of people here, but what we actually want to do is be able to pull out the contents of these people. For instance, we want to have this pattern that shows face, name, age. We want this pattern to be reusable easily, right? And we don't want to have to drag and drop in this whole thing or even necessarily this line that has the image. Let me put this span on a new line, this image and the span and everything like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new template and we're going to throw this stuff that's an individual person into its own template. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to show my sidebar here. And now just in my root directory, because we don't really have any project structure yet, we'll get into that in a later video. I'm going to make a new file and it's just going to be person.html. HTML. Okay, just like that. Now inside of person.html, I'm simply going to copy and paste, well, I should say cut, everything from our inside of our list item inside of here, like so. If we save this, you'll see all that content is now gone from our site. Okay, now let's head back. And in our list item now within our list item, we can use the directive ngInclude to include that template. So we can simply say bracket ngInclude. Now, you haven't seen a lot of directives yet that are like this. We've simply been showing you directives that are on other elements. Well, some directives, including ngInclude, can be on their own. So we just have ngInclude as its own tag, like so. Now, keep in mind, like with any tag, we need to close it off, so you need to have a closing ngInclude. Now, what we want to have is a property that is source. So the source, or src, is going to be equal to, in quotes, the new template that we're looking for, which is person.html. Okay, so now we're including person.html with this ngInclude tag. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because we have this source attribute that it's looking for, which is an HTML attribute, what it actually needs is inside of these source quotes are an additional pair of single quotes. Now these quotes are easy to forget, but ngInclude is looking for a string itself. So if this was coming from our controller, it would be defined as a string like so, and then you could output it with the curly brackets. But since we're not outputting with curly brackets, we just need it like this. Okay, now let's refresh this page. Now, if you'll notice, we're getting an XML HTTP request error. Now, this is a problem because this is not using a web server. We're essentially just using the file. It's giving us a cross-origin request error. So the way we can get around this is actually by spinning up a quick and easy server. We're going to be doing that with just a Python server. Now, I'm not sure if Python is included in Windows, but in Mac, you can come to your terminal, browse to the file structure. If I hit ls or L, you can see I'm at the root of my project directory, and from here I can simply say python -m simple HTTP server, just like so. And if I hit enter there, it's going to be starting up a server on port 8000. Now what we can do is browse to localhost :8000 and you'll see it's getting us our site. But you'll notice there's some issues here. Because we're using ngInclude as a directive itself, it's now messing up our display flex. If you haven't used Flexbox, you may not understand why. So what we want to do is actually use ngInclude itself on the list item. That way we don't have an additional wrapper around our content. So as we showed you, you can use ngInclude as its own element, or you can use it by simply removing this src equals like this. Let's cut this whole line out here. I'm going to delete this whole line of code. And before this closing caret here, we can paste this in here. And now we're saying inside of this list item, include ng-include this string. So if we save this, now we refresh, you notice our alignment issues are fixed because we now don't have that extraneous ngInclude element. So if you don't need that element there, you can just use something like this by throwing ngInclude onto the container itself. Okay, so now this is great. We have separation a little bit. Now if we want to edit a person, we know exactly where to go, and with it's in person.html. However, that's not all that ngInclude is capable of. In fact, we can use ngInclude to bring in SVGs in line, which will allow us to style them with CSS. So inside of my span here, I'm going to put this on a new line. I'm going to make an ng-include like so, and we're going to have src again equals double quotes, and then instead of single quotes, just like we had last time, I'm going to close this element out. Now I'm going to browse to a path, which is going to be /img, because you can see I have an image directory here, and inside of there I have a twitter.svg, which is the SVG file right here. Now we have /twitter.svg. Okay, so the brilliance of this is, now that we refresh, you can see we have these Twitter birds all over the place. Well, let's actually check out the HTML. Instead of actually referencing this SVG like an image, like we were to if we had just an image src tag, it's actually bringing in the entire SVG into our HTML. And you can see just like so. And we have this path with a fill in it. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and actually edit this SVG file. I'm going to show you something pretty cool here. So if we come to our twitter.svg, the fill is on this path, so I can go ahead and give this an ID. Let's say something like, let's just say Twitter. This ID is Twitter, and I'll copy this, come to our HTML. We have to save this SVG, by the way. Come to our HTML, and now we can style this simply by saying Twitter. And if we were to say fill, we could fill this in with a blue color. Okay, now let's come back here and let's refresh. And you'll see they're not getting this blue color, but the CSS is getting through because there's a fill already on it. So let's go ahead and just add an important here. Just like so. Okay, we now are able to style these SVG files, even though if you look at our HTML, in our person.html, we're not actually having to include all of that SVG stuff. In the past, if you wanted to have inline SVG, we would typically copy all of this stuff, we would throw it into our document, and suddenly our HTML looks terrible because it has a bunch of XML stuff in it. So that's great. We no longer have to worry about that. Using ngInclude, we can include an SVG just like we would an image, and we still get access to the abilities to style with CSS, really giving us the full power of inline SVGs. Perfect. So that is ngInclude. You can include templates, you can include code. As always, this is Scott with Level Up Tutorials. If you have any questions or comments, leave a comment in the video, hit us up at Twitter or Level Up Tuts. We love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.